Hello everyone, welcome to the Tech and Auto Show. I'm your host Banasena, and it is so good to see all of you lovely people once again. You've come to that one show which satisfies your hunger for both technology as well as automobiles at one place, which basically means why should you be watching two shows when you can watch one? This one. Now, since we cover these worlds of technology and automobiles, they're really busy. That means we have a lot of things to talk about in this episode. So let's kick things off by first showing you a glimpse of what you can expect over the course of the next half an hour. This week, we'll be taking a closer look at the all-new OnePlus Nord CE 5G and telling you all you need to know about it. Then we'll be giving you some tips and tricks to keep your car ready for the monsoon that's upon us. And last but not least, we'll also be talking about the all-new Lamborghini Huracan EVO Spider that has been launched in India. So there you have it, all of that action will be coming your way, but we're going to start off with the world of technology. And in that world, making a smartphone as it is a very difficult task because there are so many people and people want so many more things. And that gets really difficult if you're planning to give a phone in the 22,000 to about 30,000 rupee price bracket because you have so many options in that segment. However, OnePlus has gone back to its roots and has taken that flagship killer approach with the new OnePlus Nord CE 5G. But have they done it? Well, in order to find that out, let's head on over to Vishal, who's telling us more up next.
It seems that the search for the true north continues. Following up from last year's fairly brilliant OnePlus Nord is this year's OnePlus Nord CE 5G. Here is the phone, and well, the reality is there's a lot of familiar bits from last year that are carried forward, but there's still a lot of new stuff here. You will find that resemblance which tells you that this is part of the OnePlus Nord family that we saw last year, but there's still a whole lot of rejigging on the spec sheet that gives this a completely different personality. OnePlus says that the Nord CE 5G is their slimmest phone since the OnePlus 6T. This measures 7.9mm in thickness and weighs 170 grams. The phone has the 3.5mm headphone jack too. The back panel doesn't have a glass layer now, and the Gorilla Glass, which genuinely added a lot to the look and the feel of the OnePlus Nord, is missing this time around. Instead, what you get is a nice matte finish. I do notice a purple tone at certain angles with this color variant when the cooler white light falls off the back panel. The OnePlus Nord CE 5G is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 750G mobile platform, while the OnePlus Nord ran the slightly more powerful Snapdragon 765G. But minor clock speed differences while at it, largely you wouldn't feel this is a downgrade. The RAM options remain as is, though the OnePlus Nord CE 5G does not carry forward the 64GB storage spec option anymore. If you're looking for the base variant, you will now get 128GB instead. Even on this chipset that isn't exactly flagship level, the performance that I saw from the OnePlus Nord CE 5G is still quite consistent. As long as you know the limitations and the virtual ceiling of this chipset, you'll never really run into a situation where apps struggle to perform, switch between, or end up force closing. This will most likely feel like an upgrade if you're switching from a phone that runs the Snapdragon 662 or the Snapdragon 732G chips, quite popular in phones between the 10,000 to the 20,000 rupee price point. OnePlus's treatment of Android with Oxygen OS is one of my preferred customizations in the entire Android smartphone space. Oxygen OS remains visually neat, uncluttered, and has a lot of features despite no preloaded app bloatware to speak of. There are slight improvements across the board, but I'm happy to know that a lot of the core functionality and features remain consistent between the more expensive OnePlus 9 series too. These options include the RAM boost, reading mode choices, as well as the always-on display. Amidst all this good stuff, the reality is the OnePlus Nord CE 5G is just making things a tad difficult for itself. For instance, the processor upgrade is a generational upgrade, but it's not a big one. It's a minor update, it's an incremental one if I may. There's no Gorilla Glass at the back, which takes away a little bit from the hold and the feel of the phone. And there are 3 cameras in the back instead of 4. Yet, what the OnePlus Nord CE 5G does and what you would want it to do is perform consistently, and that's exactly what it does. This is not a slow phone at all. Chances are you will be upgrading from a mid-range Android phone to this one, and compared to those sort of spec sheets and performance, this is most definitely an update and an upgrade.
Now let's move on to the world of automobiles, and in that world, well, it's time to take care of your precious car because, well, monsoon is upon us. Now, depending on where you live in the country, it might be really harsh on you or a little bit softer, but nevertheless, there are things that you need to do. So, up next, I'm going to be telling you some tips and tricks that you can do in order to keep your car ready for the monsoon season. Take a look. Well, it's time to talk about the question that comes to us every year, which is how to take care of your vehicle when monsoon is approaching. And every year, for some reason, I'm always answering this question on a very sunny day like it is today. But nevertheless, this is a very important question because you see, monsoon can mean different things in different parts of our country. Somewhere it's really harsh on our vehicles and somewhere it's not that much. However, the things that you can do in order to keep your car ready for this season are the same. So we always decide to put together a list of the things that you can do in order to keep your car ready for the monsoon season. Here are the things that you need to keep in mind. Visibility is your friend during the monsoon season because, unsurprisingly, you need to look where you are going. And in order to be able to do that during the monsoon, well, you need to take care of your wiper blades. See, the thing is, they tend to get hard and brittle over time, and that could not only give you a poor cleaning experience when it rains, but it could also damage your windshield. So make sure that you give it a check. Maybe try cleaning your windshield with it once to see how it goes, and if you don't find it to be satisfactory, get them replaced. Also, while you're at it, top up that washer fluid too. Now that your visibility is sorted out, the next thing we need to look at are the tires. Now, good tires are important in every weather and driving conditions, but even more so when it rains. You see those grooves on the tires? Well, they are meant to ward off excess water from the tires and help you maintain a prominent contact patch between the tire rubber and the road below. This, as you would think, is important because it helps you turn and it helps you brake. So, a worn-out tire without proper grooves will mean that in emergency braking scenarios or during sharp turns, your car won't stop or turn easily, and that can be a life or death situation. So, if you've been planning to change those tires, now is the time to do so. Speaking of emergency scenarios, brakes are extremely important too. They work hand in hand with the quality of tires your car has, and your tires are going to be as good as your brake pads when you really need them to perform. So make sure you get that checked and replaced if need be. It is important to check your electricals, whether everything is working or not, especially since now most of our cars have been standing idle for months. So just check whether all your lights, blinkers, fog lamps, headlamps and all of that is working properly. While you're at it, also check the battery condition because during the monsoon, you will be using the electrical components like all these lights and wipers a lot more. A lot of people have the same concern as you when the monsoon approaches, and in order to meet that demand, almost every automaker comes out with a pre-monsoon service package which focuses exactly at the things that need to be checked for the rainy season. Now, the checks that we mentioned are important, but it is always advisable to visit a professional if you can, as they would have a more comprehensive checklist and the right tools to perform that check properly and do the service work required. So there you have it. These are our tips for the upcoming monsoon season. So grab your umbrella, pop it into the car and be ready for the rainy day. Now moving on, at the start of the show we talked about how difficult it is to make a smartphone in the 20 to 30,000 rupees price bracket because there are so many options out there. We spoke about the OnePlus Nord CE 5G, but then again, proving my point is the fact that eQ also has a new phone in this market which has been recently launched. It's called the Z3 and it's got some really exciting things on offer, at least on paper. How is it to use? Well, Shovik is finding that out up next.
The Indian smartphone market is always a pretty exciting one, And now, in the range of the 20 to 30,000 segment, there are a whole bunch of really exciting smartphones to consider. The latest one among them is this one, the EVO Z3. Now this smartphone comes into the 20 to 30,000 segment and plays a pretty well documented spec to price war. It features the Snapdragon 768 chipset and a whole bunch of other goodies, which it says is going to make it one of the best sellers in this segment. But can it really do so? Does it have enough to beat heavyweights from the likes of Samsung, Vivo and so on? Let's find out in our review of the EVO Z3. Now to first talk about design, durability and ergonomics, the EVO Z3 is not entirely bad, but there are clear shortcomings. On the overall sense, the design is as generic as you'd expect in a smartphone. However, from the front, the EVO Z3 clearly looks like a budget smartphone. The water drop notch looks a bit dated, and even if you can overlook it, you cannot overlook the really thick bezels that surround its display. Now to the rear, EVO has given a gradient finish, and the blue/orange shade does look a little bit better than the black, grey and steel shade, which frankly looks a bit dull. But what really bothers is how cheap plasticky the rear panel feels. The overall build quality is not entirely bad, but on the overall sense, the EVO Z3 feels more like a budget smartphone than a premium smartphone. The overall in-hand feel is pretty decent and ergonomics are well taken care of. You also get a 3.5mm audio jack, which is gonna help you connect to wired earphones. After that, we come to our next point, which is about the display and the software interface. Now in terms of the display, the 6.5-inch display more than gets the job done. In fact, it is a good display with a measured color tone. It does not have really evident biases, it's not too warm, it's not too cold, and viewing angles are good enough. The overall peak brightness is also bright enough for you to see outdoors, and at night you can dim it enough to make sure that it doesn't hurt you at night. And you can also make the display tilt either ways to make sure that the viewing angles are good. Now all of that is great, and the display also gets a 120Hz refresh rate, which means that it is up to date and up to speed with what the rest of the competition offers. And all of that is great. But in terms of the software experience is where the EVO Z3 falls short by a bit. It runs Vivo's FunTouch OS 11, which is expected since EVO is a Vivo sub-brand. However, the FunTouch OS 11 software interface does have certain shortcomings. For instance, it does not give the EVO Z3 an always-on display, and that is something that's clearly amiss, and that's something that other phones in this competition offers. The overall software also has too much animation, so to say, which kind of makes the phone feel sluggish and slow, and that is not something that you would really enjoy. Now on the performance front, the EVO Z3 really shines through, and it is its strong suit. The EVO Z3 gets the Snapdragon 768G SoC, and it is really one of the best in the segment, if not the best. It offers the best possible performance, which makes EVO Z3 a commendable performer, and it is basis of that it reaches our recommendation charts. Now you get up to 8GB of RAM, but you can also add on 3GB of virtual RAM if you have enough storage available on your phone. For that, you can take either 128GB or 256GB of storage, and that's the max that you can get, and it works really well and smoothly for the most part. On overall sense, everyday apps load pretty smoothly, multitasking works fine enough, and even games load pretty well. However, there are a few stutters, especially in games when you play them intensively for multiple hours with apps such as mail and browsers open in the background. On the overall sense, there is that slight hint of stutter, and RAM consumption is pretty high. The EVO Z3 always takes up about 4GB of RAM, which raises concern that it might be very easy to top out the performance of this phone. So if your phone gets loaded up in the eventuality, the phone might slow down over time, but at the moment it is one of the best performing phones that you can buy at the 20,000 price point. The one area where the EVO Z3 actually impressed us is its camera performance. The 64 megapixel primary camera does take a number of decent photographs, especially when it comes to the color tones. It produces pretty decent dynamic range, and on the overall sense, the color balance and the tonal accuracy is well preserved on the EVO Z3. The overall camera also produces pretty good videos and macro shots, and it is a camera that you would like to use over time. Now it does have its shortcomings in the sense that the overall levels of details are not as impressive as they could have been, but if you want to purely use your camera to post on social media and show off your newfound photography skills, the EVO Z3 can more than get the job done. It does get features such as super anti-shake mode and movie aspect ratio mode through its software, and while that works pretty well, it does miss out on a few of Vivo's flagship camera features such as the light trails or slow exposure mode, and that's something that you'll have to live with. In terms of battery life, the EVO Z3 fares an average 1 work day battery cycle, which is to say that it'll last you for about 12 to 13 hours on intense usage, on medium intense usage, and it's gonna last you up to 18 hours in like medium usage. Now medium usage of course entails general social media usage, navigation, a little bit of music streaming and so on, while intense usage also involves lots of calls and also video streaming for at least an hour and gaming for at least an hour. Now 12-hour usage cycles mean that you'll have to charge it once at least at the end of the day, so a nighttime charge is gonna suffice. And in terms of charging, the EVO Z3 features 55 watt fast charging, which more than gets the job done. It can charge up to 60% in half an hour, which is a pretty fast enough charging rate, and make sure that you don't have to wait for long if you forget to charge it at night. You can simply juice it up in the morning without being delayed for work. So to conclude, does the EVO Z3 make for a recommendable smartphone? Well, it's not something that you would instantly ask people to buy, but it is also definitely a smartphone that you would ask people to keep in the shortlist and consider if 20,000 is the peak price range that they can go to. The EVO Z3 costs 19,990 for the 6GB RAM model, and for the 8GB RAM models it costs 21,000 and 22,000 for 8GB RAM and 128 or 256GB storage. And it is definitely a smartphone that should be kept in consideration because it is a good performer and it has a reasonably usable camera and a pretty decent display. However, it does feel and look like a budget smartphone, and that is something that you will have to consider while buying a phone at the 20,000 price point.
Welcome back. You're watching the Tech and Auto Show and I'm your host Manav Sinha. Now, as promised, before going for the short commercial break, it's time to talk about a supercar. Lamborghini, no less. Now, Lamborghini is known for making some of the best cars on the planet, especially when it comes to the looks department, even though it's subjective, I personally think so. And now they have a new car for us Indian buyers. It's called the Lamborghini Huracan EVO rear-wheel drive Spider, and I know it's a long name, but there is meaning to it, and the car of course looks fantastic. So we got up close and personal with the car, and here's everything you need to know courtesy of Anirudh up next.
Now, as inoculation drives kick in across the country, India is slowly reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic, and one of the big indicators for the same are new product launches. So the one that we are going to talk about today is a new entrant that has arrived in the supercar segment in India with 610 horses in its bank. Yes, you guessed it right, it's the Lamborghini Huracan EVO rear-wheel drive Spider. Now, the car has been launched in India at an ex-showroom of Rs 3.54 crore, which if you ask me is quite competitive for its caliber. So instead of figuring out a shorter way to take its name, we are going to take a look at the car itself. So let's get into it. So to start with the looks of the car, there are not many visual changes. In comparison to the 4-wheel drive versions, this one gets different elements in the bumper area that is a little bit more aggressive with more pronounced use of black splitters. Now we are here to talk about an open top car, which brings us to the main event. A fabric roof that is neatly tucked at the back can be brought up with the press of a button. The process takes about 17 seconds and can be done at speeds of up to 50 km per hour. Now the car that you see here sports the Lamborghini's blue Solaris paint option, which brings us to the extent of customization options on the car. Your wishes can tweak elements on the car, including The paint, the stripes, the rims, the color of the brake calipers and a bunch of other things on the interiors as well. This brings us to the inside of the car, and this is perhaps where we have to report the least, considering all the major elements have been retained from the old model. You get a big steering wheel that comes with Anima drive mode control to choose between the 4 driving modes. There is a digital instrument cluster and a new touchscreen infotainment system that comes with Apple CarPlay and Amazon Alexa voice recognition. Now remember when we said the 3.54 crore rupees was reasonable? Let me explain why. You see, Lamborghini has been quite clever in specifying the standard equipment on the car. A lot of the features that are standard on the 4-wheel drive versions come as optional over here, which evidently cuts down the base amount significantly. A few of the elements that are standard on its 4-wheel drive sibling but is optional here include adaptive dampers, carbon ceramic brakes, parking sensors and even the front nose lift function. Although we would recommend to get the last one for anyone who's planning to pry it on the Indian roads. Now coming to the heart of the matter, the engine. This Lamborghini is powered by a naturally aspirated 5.2 litre V10 that produces 610 horsepower and 560 Newton meters of torque. The car can get up to 100 km per hour from standstill in just 3.5 seconds. For the 200 km per hour mark, it takes about 9.6 seconds. Now, as compared to the 4-wheel drive version, the 0 to 100 time is about 0.4 seconds slower, which you and me both can agree is acceptable. The car weighs 1,509 kilograms, which is not a lot, but this is a whole 120 kilograms heavier than its coupe sibling. Now we have come a long way from the time when we used to think that 610 horses just for the rear wheels is a bit of an overkill. Now while the all-wheel drive version gets the Lamborghini LDVI to maintain its traction, this one gets a far simpler system called the Performance Traction Control or the PTC. Now while this might be a simpler system, Lamborghini claims that it works better than the outgoing version, providing 20% more traction out of corners and, you're gonna like this, 30% more driftability, and that we like. So, in conclusion, it is quite safe to say that this is one of the most brutal Lamborghinis out there. Additionally, the absence of the front drive shafts also means that you don't have to worry about the weight that comes along with it. So all in all, this is definitely a car you don't want to mess with.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of the Tech and Auto Show. I really hope you enjoyed this edition. And if there's anything you want us to know, anything you want us to cover, or you simply want to have a conversation with us, well, feel free to reach out to us on our Twitter handles. If it's about technology, you can reach out to us at News18Tech. If it's about automobiles, tweet out to us at News18Auto. And remember, by logging on to news18.com, you can read up more on both these industries. Well, that's about it for today. I'll catch you same time next week, only on CNN News 18.